And then, but it wasn't, and then most of our classes were in the middle school.
Sure.
But I think it was just the young, kids that were over there because it was a split, it was high. But, and I'm not I know something they just have to
Right on the table. I got finance. Okay. Finance page. Right.
Just on the fly, yes.
It works is fine after.
Yes.
And that's the kind I got
Meeting started. Call meeting order at 7:01. Appreciate everybody showing up. The way we're going to do is we're going to introduce ourselves, go through our slideshow, the presentation, and after that we're going to open up to questions. And after that we go. Anybody wants to break off and go into a tour, they can. I'm Donald Giese, Vice President.
I'm Alicia Pulver, I'm the assistant principal.
Tim Holt, Superintendent.
Brooke Stafslin, Athletic Director.
David Enander, Director.
Melissa Bockel, Director. Tanya Skor, Director.
Barb Reese, the Business Manager.
And as this is a special school board meeting, we'd ask that if you didn't have a chance to, please sign in. We have some sign-in sheets next to the door. So if you didn't have a chance to do that, please do so before you leave. We've got, like Donald said, we've got a short presentation we'll go through. I will talk a little bit about how we got to this point. And then we have Mrs. Pulver and Mr. Staffson will talk about some of the needs we have. I'll talk about a little bit funding question, or a little bit about the funding, and then, as Donald said, we'll have some question and answer time. So, as all of you know, we were experiencing fairly rapid growth due to the oil activity in the area. Saw a fairly large increase in our enrollment. We saw a low of enrollment of 340 students back in 2004-05. Today we're at 686 students, K-12. So obviously we had some strains put on our buildings. So the school board back in 2010 or so decided we have to try to come up with a plan. How do we address the needs that we have at our buildings because of this growth in enrollment? So the school at that time hired an architect engineer firm. That architect engineer firm started a process to address or identify what the needs are and how we would address them. So surveys were completed, surveys were done with staff members, teachers, administration, school board members, and as a result of those surveys, needs were identified and plans were drawn up. So plans were identified for both buildings, both the high school and the elementary school, a 3-phase plan. Phases 1 and 2 were done in 2012. There was an addition onto the east end of the high school here, and then an addition on at the elementary as well, some kindergarten classrooms, a new library, and some remodeling in the special ed area. With the new board in 2015, we still had some strains at the high school, so the board decided to go back to the same engineer architect firm and see if we still had the same needs, if our needs had changed at all, and how we would address those. So went back to the same process again, surveying staff members, surveying administration, including the school board in that process, and through that process came up with a plan for how we would address those needs at the high school. And we have needs in many different areas, so I'll turn it over to Mrs. Pulver and Mr. Staffson. Mr. Staffson will actually go first and talk about the needs we have.
Good evening. Thank you all for attending. Tonight I wish to outline some of the needs of our school district in our extracurricular areas pertaining to athletics. My intention is by no means to persuade a yes or no vote by outlining wants, but to inform you the voting base of our needs as a school district. The majority of our facilities that we currently use in athletics were designed in the 1960s. Although our student numbers are very similar to that time, the amount of sports and activities have grown tremendously. Girls' sports alone have doubled the usage of our facilities. During the fall seasons, we have 7th and 8th grade girls volleyball, A squad, B squad, C squad girls volleyball, varsity football, junior high football, junior varsity football, fall cheer, boys and girls cross country, all competing for the same locker room space and on occasions the same gym space. A primary example of our shortage in the fall was when we hosted a football game as well as a volleyball game on the same night. The away football team used our boys' locker room. Our football team used the band room. The away volleyball team used our girls' locker room. Our girls used the weight room, and our cheer team was using the special ed conference room. Not only does this present logistical and monitoring problems, but health hazards as well. Showering after athletic events prevents many contagious diseases such as impetigo, ringworm, and MRSA that in recent years have been on the rise, and due to the fact that we only have 2 locker rooms only exacerbates the problem. Not one of our teams on that particular night had access to a locker room or showers. Winter sports also experienced similar problems with 5th grade and 6th grade girls basketball, 7th grade and 8th grade girls basketball, A squad, B squad, and C squad girls basketball, winter cheer, wrestling, 5th and 6th boys basketball, 7th and 8th boys basketball, A squad, B squad, and C squad boys basketball. Girls basketball the majority of the time does not have access to a shower due to the fact that wrestling has a higher risk of the spread of contagious diseases, so they are given the boys' locker room. The away team gets our girls' locker room, and our girls dress in the weight room. Our cheer often uses the special ed conference room. During spring sports, we again experienced similar issues with girls softball, boys baseball, boys golf, girls golf, boys track, and girls track, all competing for gym and locker room space during the month it usually takes for the weather and field conditions to get good enough to go outside. Our locker rooms are under-equipped to meet the needs of our students and coaches. Both locker rooms only have 1 toilet and 1 outlet that can be used at a time. This year, Grafton came off of a 4.5-hour bus ride with 50 players and coaches only to have access to 1 toilet in the locker room. Our cross-country girls meet every morning at 6:30. during their season and are forced to use a facility with only one usable outlet for their various needs to get ready for the day. Coaches and officials are often faced with the fact of either having to shower with our athletes or not at all. These are just a few school-sponsored events and do not include men's league, multiple traveling girls basketball and boys basketball teams, pee-wee wrestling, yoga, league volleyball, Zumba, and many others. Liability is another major concern with some of our facilities. Our wrestlers use the stage for wrestling. In the heat of competition, we have had instances where these athletes have fallen off the stage or into a wall, which has resulted in many injuries, including multiple examples of concussions. We have had pee-wee wrestlers struck by softballs and track athletes hit by baseballs. Faced with the fact of having so little space, we have no choice but to share and make do, accepting the risk of sharing space over not being able to find practice times at all. Another risk that we experience daily to the lack of space are the less than ideal practice times. During the winter months, it is common for both the elementary school and high school teams to have practice in the morning and multiple sessions in the evenings. With varsity girls basketball, boys basketball, junior high teams, and cheer teams competing for space, 5th and 6th grade basketball players are often given last pick for practice times. This often leaves them with practice from 6:30 to 8:30 on school nights, and we also have traveling teams use the facility after that. These are 9 to 12-year-old children, and in many cases are not getting home until close to 10 p.m. at night, and on many cases on school night. Another concern is weather during the winter months. Early mornings and late night practices present their own problems. We have had athletes that need to be on the road by 4:30 a.m. just to make 6:30 a.m. practice. In some cases, students have already been on the road before the highway department has had a chance to clear the roads or before a decision was officially made about our school day being delayed or canceled due to weather. Space is also limited with storage. We have equipment stored in every nook and cranny. We have storage containers packed to the brim, a garden shed on the softball field filled, closets, bathrooms, ballrooms, coaches' garages, and even in our bus barn. Our track pits were ruined recently due to water damage when the bus barn roof leaked on them, causing a $10,000 replacement cost. We have $25,000 in wrestling mats, often stored near a batting cage or in the commons, exposing them to a risk of damage. Accurate inventories aren't always possible due to the fact that much of our athletic equipment is stored off-site or in containers not easily accessible or in tubs where the equipment is not easily counted or tracked while in storage. Uniforms are exposed to theft, damage, and loss every day. Our football equipment storage room has been called the worst football storage room I have ever seen by a salesman that travels all over the state doing football equipment sales. This was even after the head football coach and his father remodeled it. We are good at making do with what we have, but what we have is not always ideal. In economics, I was recently teaching my students about cost-benefit analysis. I understand that people will be for and against this project based on many different opinions. Today I would encourage you to listen to the needs of our school and the opportunities that we miss out on so that you can do your own cost-benefit analysis. I want you to make an informed decision when you decide whether the needs of our students and the potential for increased opportunity will offset the cost or any other reservations you may have for this project. I encourage you to take a tour later on tonight so that you may ask any questions of me and then I may address them appropriately. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about our building needs. From the start, I think some of you have heard this before, but the question is, how many of you came in the main door this evening? Okay, and then the next question is, which is the main door? Currently, this would appear to be the main door, that being the parking lot that everybody does come in right off. So it's tough to tell what is the main door in our school. Also, we now have a buzzer system installed, which does give us an element of protection. However, when you get buzzed in the building, you don't have to go directly to the office right now. There's plenty of times when people can be buzzed in and they can go into the gym or they can go down the hall. We don't necessarily know where they go once they come into our building. So that is something that is an area of concern for us, the safety of our kids when people enter our building. Right now, our band has approximately 120 students that are currently using a space designed for 40 students. So when they're all gathering together for pep band, for large band practices, there's not a lot of room for them. Within the next 2 years, given what is our current enrollment in the 5th and 6th grade band, we anticipate another 60 kids moving into our band room. And we're not graduating that many students. I think we have just a couple seniors right now in band. So the 120 plus is going to grow over the next couple of years. They're already short on storage. Right now they're using an area under the crow's nest. And when it was 15 degrees below zero just a couple weeks ago, the drumline had to go out and get their harnesses that they use, bring them in, let them warm up so that they can actually use them for practice. So that's an area that we could look at addressing. Also, like right now, we are practicing for our regionals and state music. If you were to come in during the day and see how that looks, we have a group of students in that vestibule, a group of students in the vestibule over here, one in the back hallway, so, and some in the little storage room. So it's just a matter of students trying to find whatever space they can occupy to practice the music and have that quiet area away from the other instruments so they can rehearse the way they need to be prepared for their contests. And the teacher's trying to move around and kind of get from group to group to give them the support that they need. Oops. Storage is an issue. Storage is an issue. You can see that where they keep their instruments, pretty crowded as students are trying to get in there, get their things, get set up for class. The drums are located up above the student's head. There's not a lot of space to leave your stands out. So trying to be as creative as possible to store everybody's instruments and still have room for the kids in the room. Last year our choir was in this room. It's our commons area, the only commons area that we have for all of our students. Choir was in here. This year, now that the 6th graders are back down to the elementary building, there is a choir room. However, it is not specifically designed as a choir room. So it does have some storage issues as well. The risers are kind of in the back, and it's a little crowded, and there's no soundproofing. So if you are in English class, there's a good chance you are hearing what's happening in the choir room as they are trying to practice. Our physical education class, there's 2 PE classes held throughout the day. 1 hour, we actually have 3 PE classes. With about 40 kids in the gym, that gets a little crowded. Our weights class, our weights is located in the center of the building, and the room itself doesn't have a lot of room for the kids. And so to be creative and to give the students they need to work out, they're doing a lot in the hallways, which really isn't conducive to learning in the rooms around them. And it's not easy when you're trying to walk down the hall and there's kids jumping rope or throwing medicine balls. Not really safe for them or for the people who happen to be needing to use the hallway. And this is just a lack of storage that we've got for all of our extracurricular materials, the instructional materials used in PE. Not a lot of space. You can see the mats, the wrestling mats that's currently being used down at the community building, but the wrestling mats are usually stacked up in here in the commons area. Some pictures of our locker rooms again. Problems with the drain issues in the one bathroom that Mr. Staffslin just covered for us. Our science rooms they're not adequate for how our students are learning right now. We have about 20-some kids in each science room, and when they are doing experiments, when they are working with chemicals, when they have Bunsen burners, you have, in Mrs. Essler's room, there's 3 tables for experiments. So you have 7 kids, 7 students crowded around a table trying to do their experiments. So many times they need to get creative as well, and worried about the safety of their kids and how they're maneuvering the chemicals and such. Sometimes they take to the hallways as well as a place that they can actually spread out and get their experiments done. Great hands-on learning opportunities for the kids, but just not a lot of space for them to have those hands-on learning opportunities. Our VOAG room has inadequate ventilation. The board has taken steps to address the ventilation in there, but still for welding and such, it's really not what we need it to be. There's a giant door that they open up, doesn't matter the temperature, sometimes they just need to open it up to get that air moving. There's no dedicated safe welding area. Our meats lab, we currently can't have a meats lab because it's not meeting the health requirements, so that is something that we've had to take off campus to try to get that for our students so they can have those learning opportunities as well. And the VOAG room is also used for concessions during football games, which means you kind of have to move things around so that you can get all the concessions down there, wheel everything down, and get it ready to go. Special education. We currently have 35 students who are on what are called IEPs, which are individualized education plans. So those plans are drawn up specifically for that student's needs, and it is a federal mandate that they have access to a free, appropriate public education, appropriate for that student. So 35 current students. We are expected to have 46 next year with the amount of students that are coming up from the elementary. So that will cause some spatial issues for us. We have 4 students with emotional disturbance, and that might mean that they have some issues with needing to calm down, with needing some space to get away from people, just to have a quiet area, a place to let off some steam. We don't have that place in our building for students right now. There's really no area for them to go where they have some privacy, where they have an area to decompress. Oftentimes, students with emotional disturbance, when their behaviors escalate, those are the behaviors that you want to remove from the classroom because it can impact the learning of others. We're just short on places for those students to go so they have their privacy and the ability to calm down and refocus and get back to class. Our Family and Consumer Science room is in need of a remodel. The sinks right now currently just have the one basin. There's no basin for rinsing, as is required to kind of teach kids the proper health, safety, food handling. The countertops are original, so is the cabinetry, and it's buckling, and so that's kind of an issue. Also, we are seeing a lot of students in those classes as well. And there's been a little bit of remodeling done in that room to try to meet the needs of the students in there, but still very crowded when it comes to cooking. Again, kids not being able to get in, get their hands on things and learn, with their hands. It's sometimes a lot of watching rather than doing. This is our commons area. It's the only commons area for all of our students. In the mornings, if you were to come here, you'd see most of our students walk laps around the inside of the building because there's no other place for them to go. It does get a little crowded in the mornings and after lunches. Our cafeteria itself, we need 3 lunch shifts to get everybody through. The middle lunch shift is problematic because they have to stop their class. They'll go to 25 minutes of class, stop in the middle of class, go have lunch, and then come back and finish their class. And teachers will tell you if they teach, a geometry that does not have that break and then a geometry that does have that break in the middle, that they don't get to cover as much material. It's hard for the students to get started, get rolling, stop, go eat, come back and finish up. And so a bigger cafeteria would help us address that and help us get kids through much faster. And the last slide there was our storage area. Just various various storage areas where we try to keep things. When you go on a tour, you will find paper in the locker room, just places, any place where we can put things is kind of what we do. When you go through the area, going to the library, we have tables stacked in there and paper stacked in there. So just trying to make do with what we can and trying to find places with which to store all of our items. Let's see if I can stop. Chairs in the back hallway. So just another area where we could use a little more space to take care of our supplies. Thank you.
So again, those were the needs identified after going through surveys with teachers and staff members and school board members. And after those needs were identified, then the plan was drawn up. And we have our engineer architect working with the construction management company we hired, Graham Construction, to put together an estimate for the cost of the project. So the estimated cost of the project is $21.6 million. If you have when you came in, there were some flyers, hopefully you were able to pick one up. So what we're talking about is the bottom of the back is what the plan is. So about $21.6 million, and that is total project cost, so that is all construction costs, all fees, and furnishing for the building. So the question I'm sure many have is how would we pay for this? The plan is to, for the $21.6 million, the school has $2.1 million in our building fund right now that we could put towards that cost. That's about 55% of what's in our building fund right now. So that leaves $19.5 million that we are then coming to you for, asking you, should we go forward with this project? It will be this $19.5 million that we would have to borrow and bond for. And the $19.5 million would be broken up into a couple of different options. So there'd be a $10 million low-interest loan, and that's 2% interest until 2025, at which point it could become variable. There is a bill at the legislature now trying to address that, but it's a low-interest loan, 2% to begin with. And then the other $9.5 million would be through general obligation bonds. So again, if you have the flyer or handout, it will focus a little bit on what it's going to cost you as an individual taxpayer. Of course, the caveat we have to make is the numbers we are using are the only known numbers we have, which are based on this year's taxable valuation. That, of course, can change. So if the taxable valuation were to drop, that impact on the individual taxpayer increases. So what we're using though are the known numbers from today, this year's taxable valuation. Just want to point out a couple of things that the school has done. We have worked to retire some debt. So the school board has paid off 2 bonds. There were 2006 bonds. Paid off a 2007 loan, a 2012 loan, and a 2014 loan, and that we paid off was about $5 million in debt that was retired. And I think this is the first time since 1983 or 4 that we've gone back to the voters for an additional levy for a building project. And that is the information I have. So I don't know, Mr. Easy.
I think right now we'll open up for questions and answers as best we can. Before we start with questions, a few ground rules that we want to go by. One person talk at a time, no talking over each other. Raise your hand so we know who's talking, stand up. Repeat the question so that everybody can hear it. Introduce yourself and give an address where you live. Allow us the time to give an answer in between questions, if you would please. So,
guess there's a question from somebody online here that was watching through the stream. It was touched on briefly last time, but some of the people maybe weren't at that meeting. If this passes, will they please keep the baseball field intact through the end of the summer? More of a statement than a question, but if you want to elaborate on that for those who maybe weren't here or didn't catch the last streams.
Yes, we figured that we'd start and keep the baseball intact as long as we possibly could, all the way through. And even if we had to build from each side and work our way to that point, just so that we can have that in place so it doesn't affect the Legion ball, doesn't affect our baseball program or anything like that, or the softball program. The girls play at the grade school and the softball program.
Stanley. I guess my concern is just the taxable valuation of the school district, what it's done in the last 5 years. It's went from 21.4 million to 63.4 million roughly. And when we're on the ballot, it's going to be 21.6 mils, correct? It's not going to be a specific dollar amount.
It's going to be in mills.
Mills, okay. So those mills bring in approximately just under 1.4 million. And if you figure at 2.5% interest over 20 years, that payment that you'll be making on that loan, that 19.5 million, will be roughly 1.25. So if taxable valuations come back down, let's say to 50 million, you're going to be bringing in just a shade over $1 million, so that leaves you roughly 200,000 short on making that payment. What mechanism kicks in then after that, if something like that would happen? Because maybe I'm being overly pessimistic, but when you see that type of increase in valuation, that's threefold in 5 years. It's kind of concerning, and I guess I just would, that's going to in turn make an impact on the other mill that you levy then too. And I know you have some room to raise them but yeah, it could really be something that could hurt the budget. And I guess if someone, I don't know who I should address this to, but I just.
Thank you, Doug. I can comment on that. And I think it's important to note that what we are doing is asking, can we borrow and bond this money? But the more important part is we borrow and bond it and pay it back. So the mills that are listed on the ballot and the mills that we have on our sheet are based on this year's taxable valuation. So we make our payment back no matter what. Does that make sense? So if the valuation goes down, the mills you pay go up because we have to make that payment back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I realize. I mean, I know that. That's what I mean. I'm just wondering what mechanism kicks in after that, and because I know you have to make that debt payment has to be made, and I'm hoping I made the right 2.5%. Being that loan is going to go to variable in 2025. That's and probably a 2.5% bond. That's a pretty reasonable thing to assume, I would think. But that's my concern, I guess. And then, on top of that, there's an existing $14.4 or $14.5 million debt. So that's my concern, I guess. So, I know that you're obligated to pay it back. I realize that. So.
And I think too, as a board, you all should know, we realize that, and that's why we're coming to you as the voters to tell us, do you think this is doable? Do you not think this is doable? Do you, I think that's why we're all here, and they're good points.
Hey, Scott Myers from Ross. I don't think it's really a mill levy. It's a dollar levy. You guys said it's a mill levy. It's not. It's a dollar. So whatever mills you need to get those dollars is what you have to levy.
We have to make that payment.
And so I got a question to that a little bit. You know, in the legal notice, it says 49 cents an acre on cropland. But in your handout, it says 74 cents an acre on cropland based on a $475 taxable valuation. Well, we know taxable valuations, they're telling us if you go to 525. So that won't be 74 cents. So how do you, I guess, I don't know, how do you compare what this paper said and then what you hand out?
Well, I will address that one as well. So the law requires us, when we are going to go to the voters for a bond issue, requires us to get a tax impact statement from the North Dakota Tax Commissioner's office. So we did that, and then published that in the paper. Okay, so that's where the 49 cents comes from.
So that comes from the state?
That comes from the State Tax Commissioner's office.
And that's maybe old news.
Right, okay, and then then we also work with Scott Wagner and Myron Knutson. Scott Wagner is an attorney, and Myron Knutson worked with the bonds. We work with them on bonding. And they're the ones where we got our numbers for our sheet from, our information, and they actually used 660, I don't remember where it is. They used an average, they didn't use 475, they used 664 or something like that. Let me find it. 664.32, and that's where the 74 cents comes from.
Okay, and that's based on
664.
valuation from some certain point.
Right.
Well, I went and talked to Lori Hanson, and she says basically, we're gonna lose industrial valuation in this district, in the county. I just talked to Brian Nelson over in Berthold. They're running into a $300,000 to $450,000 shortfall because their rail facility over at Berthold was shut down and they lost $150,000 of valuation, tax. And, you know, we're not immune to that. I understand that EOG out here hasn't sent a train in 2 years. So that could go away. I mean, I don't want to call it chicken little. You know, I understand we have maybe opportunities to grow and not. But I think we need to do this on a longer term look at what things are going to happen. Okay? I guess another area I'm concerned with is I went and talked to Mr. Peterson, and I talked to Mr. Rand, and I asked, what are you doing in these rooms? And they didn't have a definite plan. They said, well, we have input. We have input. Okay, like in the science room, you have a cost of $784,000 or something in the science room. I said, how can that cost so much if you just add some pods in here and use that as your classroom? Well, he said, well, I'll have input. So there is no definite plan per se, right? It's a general, you want the money, then you develop a plan. Is that accurate?
We had our construction management company here, and the reason there is not a definite plan is because architectures cost money.
Okay.
And until we actually have the vote passed and the plan going forward, we're not going to spend those monies up front. The cost that we are given right now is, that's what they think is going to cost us the very most at the very high end of things. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to cost that much, but we actually will not have a definite plan until we know for sure we're moving forward with this project.
And I understand that. I mean, okay, but then my next question goes to, I wasn't at the last meeting, but they said we might do something outside if we come under cost. Well, what are you going to do outside? I mean, there's got to be some kind of cost associated with that, general kind of cost. I guess that's sort of what I'm, you know, the track, the football field, the bus barn. So to me, it seems like no matter what, we're going to spend the 19.5. I guess that's my question. Okay. Is that what our intent?
No, that's not our intent. Our intent is to cover our needs when we need to get our bases done. And if it's feasible and we can make our payments, then we will pursue those things. Like that's, like the track in the field and that stuff, we don't necessarily need to do that right now, but the school part of it, we do. And if we can use that stuff right now, we can't have track meets, but we still can have practices.
But I understand, but I'm just saying that if this comes under budget, the building aspect, you're gonna spend it out there probably.
That'll be a decision we make at the time. It is right now listed as possible alternates. I mean, if you come in and our project comes in at $14 million and you can redo the football field, which has been definitely something that this community has indicated a want or a need or whatever, the track field, and you can do that for $2 million and you still are coming in under budget, that's a decision that the board at that time will make. Can we say right now, today, that we're definitely going to go forward with that? No. Can I say we're not going to? No. I think it all depends on what the project comes in at, what the needs are, where we're at.
Okay, one other question I have, I'm sorry for taking up all your guys' time. Have you guys made a motion to make this a sunset clause where it does not extend past the period that's in question? You understand what I'm saying?
I do, and I think that the question is, and I hate to look to an attorney, but I see Wade back there, but I mean, I think the question is, we borrow this money and pay it off, and then that's it. I don't know that there has to be a sunset clause, because the question is, can we borrow it and pay it back? So
Well,
there's like a
you
natural
can
sunset.
borrow, because you've got it as a 20-year period.
Right.
After that 20-year period,
Right.
that bond goes, or that
Goes away.
mill
That's
goes
done.
away.
Or
done.
before, right?
It's done.
Okay, I mean, but I'd like to have that in a motion from the board at some point to stay that. Because we're in a situation right now where the last building mill levy is under question if we really have it or not. So those are things that we talked about. I mean, Elaine can fill you more in on that.
Okay, my name is Elaine Bockel, and I live on 9240 56th Street, Ross, in the country. But anyway, I was on the board when it was 83, so I'm old. And there's a few of them out here that voted. But it was an issue back, as those people know, 83 and 90, or in 80s and 90s. The farm economy was suffering dearly. So was Main Street. Everybody was in the agriculture states. And we had the issue of it was an old school. It was a high school at one time. Part of it was kind of underground. And it was a 2-story old school. Okay. And it was really difficult. So I understand the dilemma that you're in. To try to get people to realize the necessity of having a new school for the safety. Now, in most board members concentrate on the education, but the safety of their children too. Anyway, it passed, barely, but it passed. Now, I was informed, which I will admit, after I got off the board, it isn't that I'm not interested, but I wasn't involved in the school functioning. And I was concerned to some of the spending that was going on, but I just kind of like, well, it must be the oil money that's coming in, or something, that's how they're paying for it. But it was explained to me that the mill levy that we put on for that grade school is still on the books and still being used. And it was paid in 2004. And so I said, well, I don't think that's legal. Not that I'm a lawyer, because I'm not, but just talking from when we were a board, and we could, because like I say, we had to make as many cuts as we possibly could to just get the bare necessities for the kids to have a safe haven. So I took it upon myself to call one of the board members no longer lives. So I called, we talked to a couple of them. Okay, one is having health issues, so we didn't get to talk to him. But the assumption that I had, as Mr. Holt explained, that when the mill levy was paid, we were assumed it was done. And it was returned back to the taxpayers in the district, because that's what we promised. And as I understand, it was not. And it has been used since 2004. So then, and I thought, well, how do we find evidence that this is not just interpretation? Because like I said, I'm old, so back when we were, I don't know if we had such a thing as a sunset clause or what, sunshine, whatever it was called. And so I said, how do we find out that when we passed this mill levy, that was the intent? I said, now that people critique everything you put down, you write or you say, I think I can understand him, but somebody else listens to it and they say, well, he meant this or that. That drives me crazy, but that might be the issue. But it bothers me that we're still using something that was not intended to continue for another 12, 13 years in the spending. I thought when they were doing these larger expenditures that they should have come. That did come to mind. Why are they not coming to us and asking for a bond to do this again? But I just kind of let it go. So anyway, we have been trying to find, and I have some paperwork, and of course, I suppose it's how you read it. To me, it's pretty quite clear. But it's on the bond issue here. And there's two bonds we have. One, and I'll read this one here. This is the official bill. And it says, shall the initial resolution adopted by the governing body of the Stanley Public School District Number 2 of Montrose County, North Dakota. Can you all hear me?
No.
No, we can't. Oh, so I gotta sit, so I gotta stand like this? Okay.
Come up here and stand.
Come up here, and can you come up front here?
So you're facing everybody, you know.
I was facing them, they could hear, but you can't. Okay. Okay.
But that way the board can hear you too.
All right. It says, shall the initial resolution adopted by the governing body of the Stanley Public School District of Number 2 of Montrose County, North Dakota, calling for insurance of the bonds be approved, and shall this Stanley Public School District Number 2 of Montrose County, North Dakota, issue its bond in the amount not to exceed $900,000. So for me, that means then you can't spend more than that, for the purpose of financing the cost of construction and equipping of a building. Now, for those of you that weren't here, as I said, there was an old structure, and then there was a newer structure that was off to the side that had classrooms and a small office space. So what we did is we built onto the newer structure, tore down the old. So it wasn't like building a whole new school. So that's how I feel that it was worded that way. And let's see, where did I leave off? For the purpose of financing the cost of construction, equipping of a building primary for school use as an elementary classroom addition to be located in the city of Stanley, North Dakota, and for certain weatherization improvements and modifications of heating system in existing elementary school building and all additional costs inclined in construction of the bond issue. So to me it's plain, but maybe for others it isn't. But that's my issue, is I'm concerned about the school continuing the bond instead of taking it off and then not coming to the district again for additional bonding, for additional expenses that they've done. And I'm not saying that those things that were done weren't necessary. I'm just saying, I guess they say ignorance is not an excuse for breaking the law. And I think when they say 900,000, that's what they mean. And that's my issue. And so I hate to bring more problems, because that's basically what this is happening here to this, to the board. You have some more you have to deal with, because you have been using that bond, and it shouldn't run off.
There were two ballots.
Right? Yep.
In January 10th of 1984, the one that you read,
Yep.
and the one that also says Shall the annual levy for the building fund of the Stanley School District Number 2 be increased from 10 mils to 20 mils? So that gave the district the right to use the 20 mils. In 2006, when there was bonds that were needed to do some remodeling and different things, this was researched and talked to with the county auditor as well. And that does not have a sunset on it. The $900,000,
But both bonds said 900 not to exceed.
not to pay it off, but then you gave the district a right for 10 to 20. Now, I don't know for sure, I don't think it's illegal. Because this was talked to by the county auditor and by different people who had this. So I don't want it to sound like we were doing illegal things.
Well, I'm not saying,
So-
to me, I'm not saying purposely doing something wrong. I'm just saying, there is this question in my mind. And like I said, I talked to 2 other board members at that time. And when I discussed it, I tried not to mislead them. I said, when we did this, what was your interpretation and meaning of the building of that school and what we did? And the one said to me, Elaine, there's no way that the people would allow this to have a bond that went on forever, because we had one hell of a time to get it just for what the things that we need. So he said, our interpretation, I believe, is correct. Now, I don't know if we have to go to a bond lawyer to have them interpret this and find out what it is we've been doing, if it's legal or what. And I'm not saying that you as a school have to do it. I'm saying we the people. I'm willing to find out what is legal.
And I think just hearing that, and that I don't have any legal, but yes, the intent was there, but that vote that says it's, because right in here too on this, where we levy, it says that this will be for the purposes of assisting the financing of the here above stated elementary school building project and for such other lawful uses of said building fund. So that right there is going to give you a non-sunsetting. So
But you have to understand, you have to understand this. You have to understand. Again, this is the interpretation part. We had a structure and we added to that structure.
Right.
And so it's not going to read as an all-new structure. It's going to have to be able to be connected to that structure, and so they're going to have to cover a lot of these things because that's part of it. It doesn't mean then that it goes on. Well, that's all I wanted to bring up, and I wanted you to be aware of what's going to go on.
And I think it's something we will definitely look into, you know, definitely.
Like you said, it's been going on, paid off since 2004.
12 years.
So yeah,
And so it's-
and we've only been on board for 3, so.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you as the board, it's administration,
Well, I know.
it's administration, board members of the past.
Right,
And,
it is.
and I'm just saying that,
And I think we can definitely look into it and definitely get something out there to let you know what we find
well,
out.
and I want to, because I feel I have
Maybe
a
Scott has
responsibility. I have a
some input on this
responsibility
since he was on the board.
to people out there.
I was on the board at that time, and this is no reflection of you guys, what happened, right, what Elaine was talking. And I think at the time when that did come up, I think I discussed it with someone, I think it was Barb, but,
I think it
we
was
did.
Mr. Stanley is the one that found it.
Exactly.
At that time, and it was discussed with.
But I don't think it was ever brought at a board meeting, so, you know, maybe I didn't do my due diligence to do that. And that's why I brought up, that we could, have a motion, if this goes through, that this is a sunset clause, so there's no ambiguity when they're all.
And I think that that's a good suggestion, and I think us as a board are definitely willing, because we have no intention of it going, just like Elaine didn't. And
Exactly.
definitely we would.
But that's the problem,
Yeah.
is we can't find those records that say that's what they intended. And the wording of the bill, or the bond, doesn't clarify it for you either.
Right.
So that's why I brought it up. You know, Elaine brought it up to me a couple days ago, and so they researched and did it, and I tried to get back and talk to other board members that I've gone with, and they don't remember anything of that nature.
And I think
But
it's a
do
good
remember
suggestion.
talking to to Barb, and I couldn't remember the name of it. And we
Yeah,
talked-
And I know that we talked to the county auditor at the time too, Scott.
No, definitely that's what we'd be putting into this one.
All right.
Any other questions?
I'm Rory Ford. I've lived here for 2 years, so I'm new. I moved here from Denver. My wife's family grew up here. If you had to prioritize the build, I know architects like to have it all at one time, and I understand the cost of that, but if you had to prioritize these areas, what would those areas be? What would the priorities be?
That's kind of a tough question because all the needs are pretty well all there.
If you had to prioritize the needs, let's just say you had to. and
I think
maybe
if
this isn't
just
the
me
one-
personally, I would say VOAG has definitely been a need. Music is definitely a need. Gym space is definitely a need. The locker rooms are definitely a need, you know?
What would be 1, 2, and 3?
You know, I wouldn't even dare to throw that out there because that I don't know that there is a 1, 2, and 3.
You're taking from one when they both need it equally. Who are you going to cut out? You know, you want to do a little for each one, but a little ain't going to cover it all.
Donnie, my name is Jan Johnson, and everybody's seen the letter to the editor and also the ad that some of the concerned citizens have put in. I'd like to address some of the issues that we did talk about. One of the things that I think that people don't understand, that this is just mills for this building. You also have another budget. And that budget is your staff, your maintenance, your ancillary staff, what happens to the students, what happens to the buildings that we maintain now. They have a budget of over how many million, Barb?
Our total million, I believe, is for expenditures.
Right.
In our general fund.
Right.
Let me look that up, I don't want to give you the wrong number. Right.
Play me a Jeopardy music today if you want.
Okay, it is $9,815,677.73.
Okay, that $9 million that she's talking about there does not remain the same every year. That $9 million goes up, and that is the taxpayers' cost. One of the major costs that we pay as taxpayers that we don't see any income in is open enrolled students. We have 56 open enrolled students. It costs us over $10,000. We get $10,000 approximately from the state, but I maybe should clarify that, because that includes transportation and everything. We really get $9,465 per student from the state. Our actual costs are over $12,700 per student. So we're losing over $100,000 on the students that are from out of our district. And the local taxpayers are paying that. When it was a wash, when I was on board, it didn't matter, because we had enough room in our classrooms that we didn't have to pay extra. That's no longer true. You're paying $100,000 every year. Okay, the school just lost $123 or $123 on the one oil transfer plant. There's 2 more coming to pass. The chances are you could lose 15%, and their total valuation on one is $33 million alone. You could lose another $100,000. At that point, you're already $200,000 in the hole. Okay, let's talk about some of the other things where Are your salaries gonna stay the same? Is nobody gonna get a $500 increase? Is nobody gonna come to negotiation and ask for a raise? Is TFFR gonna stay the same, teachers' retirement? Teachers have had salary increases the last 5 years, and I'll be honest, I think they've had damn good raises, because county employees got a 0% raise and a 1% raise. I can tell you what the teachers got. They got 8%, 8.5%, 10%, 12%, and a 5% on their retirement. And that goes up every year. That's pretty good raises for a failing economy. Farmers' income has not, they have good times, but they're on the downhill slope now. Farmland has increased 40%. A valuation on 1/4 of land has increased 40% in the last 5 years. And I know that some homes have tripled. Farmers' expenses don't stay the same, they have no control. But their income has lowered in half. And that makes a big difference. When those industrial properties go off, where does it switch? It switches to the city and to the farmland, majority. So then you have commercial properties. We're losing a big business in town. We're going to lose a lot of sales tax dollars. So when we lose sales tax dollars, and basically it's cut in half on the state level and on the city level, you're losing those dollars. Okay? Where are you going to make those up? Ruth is closing, so we're going to lose a lot of sales tax. You know, and that's a terrible thing. I talked to Don Longmire today for over an hour. Do you know what your per pupil payment is going to do next year? It's going to stay exactly the same. You're not going to get any more money. So what's your budget going to do? Are your expenses going to stay the same, board, or are you going to raise our meals up? You and I both know the answer to that. I sat on the board. I know how hard. We were at 185 meals. We riffed teachers. And that's hard, because if you become building rich, and I would love to see all this. I know the needs in the band group. I looked at that FOAG group. But there comes a point. Watford City is there right now. I talked to Watford City. They can't afford to maintain the Rough Rider Center. They asked the county for $1 million. County turned it down. The money isn't there. Watford City isn't giving money that they need to maintain their buildings. So what's going to happen to us in 5 years? 5 years is when it's going to hit us. Might not hit us until then, but in 5 years, and none of you might be sitting there in 5 years, but you will be hurt. And you know who's going to be hurt the worst? Is the taxpayers, because they're still liable when we don't have the money.
I'd like to make a correction. It isn't just us taxpayers that are going to, it's our students. It's our students that are going to pay. So we got to spend money wisely so they have a place to come.
Scott, I sat on the board when we went to RIFs and we didn't have money. And it was due to the building of the elementary. We couldn't give raises, we couldn't buy buses. We RIF teachers. And if anybody's went through a RIF, you find out it splits your community right apart. You know, I'm not against kids. I'm the one that helped put this master plan together and what you guys are doing. But we looked at it and we couldn't afford it at the time. All right? I think 3-4 years ago you could have passed it, but that's my own personal opinion, so you guys made different decisions, that's fine. But, you know, I don't like to be said I'm not for kids. I think I'm looking out for financial health of our district. And I don't think that, this has to be the end of it. I think we need to sit down and discuss and find out what we can do as a district to try to alleviate some of it. Because I do see their needs, I know. I've been around for a lot of years, so that's all I wanted to tell you.
I got a question to the board. If this does pass, would the bonds be sold to local investors, or would this go to just banks or out-of-state people, or what? I mean, if the local people are going to pay for it, I think they should be offered to them if that's legal to do. I don't even know. Just a question.
That's a good question. I'm not sure if you can.
That is something that we could talk to Myron Knudsen. He's the bond specialist for PFM Financial.
Because I think you get 3-4% plus it's tax-free. And that's an incentive for people to invest in a bond.
I think it's in the century code too.
We can get back to you, Arnold.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any more questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. Anybody's interested in going on a tour of the school?
If people are interested in a tour, would you come over by the FFA sign here, and then we can split you into groups? We've got some.